Hello and welcome to part 2 in this Horus Heresy Future in Plastic video series. In the last episode, I went through the entire plastic range from Games Workshop in Horus Heresy that they released about June time of 2022. In this video, I will be going through Forge World's current resin offerings and some of the miniatures that are now missing on their site, and discuss their possible future in plastic. Now, if you're new to Games Workshop and Forge World, or you're just new to Forge World, and this is the first video you've come across, or you've seen a few of the resin miniatures in videos and you've heard people say, oh, it's by Forge World, it's easier if you think of Forge World as Games Workshop, because that's what they are. Games Workshop created Forge World. It's a little area at the HQ where it was set up a good 20 or so years ago as a kind of specialist games and lower popular miniatures studio. And what I mean by that is they firstly dealt in resin and didn't incorporate any plastic at all. And sometimes they made hybrid kits that would incorporate some of Games Workshop's own kits, like a Rhino kit, and then build their own resin weapon options. There were kits and models that weren't popular enough, or Games Workshop wouldn't sell enough, that they could design them in CAD and also create these big metal injection molds for their machines to mass produce them in plastic. And those machines costs tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds. One such miniature, one of the largest miniatures they made back then, was a Baneblade tank. The original Baneblade tank. I have an original Baneblade tank and I will be creating a video showcasing it. The resin it's very different to the resin that we have today. And even more so, I think the resin in 2022 has changed slightly from previous years. But it did its job. They were able to create miniatures that were relatively expensive, that didn't sell enough to justify an injection mold, but sold well enough to continue making them and for the studio, the arm of Games Workshop, to grow. And it grew. Oh yes. As soon as they delved into Horus Heresy and they started creating Space Marines from that era, and tanks and dreadnoughts, moving into knights and titans, it became hugely popular. So much so, I sometimes view it as a launch pad. Some of Games Workshop's plastic miniatures. Custodes is a prime example of this. But other factions have benefited too. What you're looking at right now is Lord of the Rings The Hobbit. Forge World have made a number of miniatures for those. They've also made miniatures and parts for other game systems, such as Necromunda and Adeptus Titanicus, as well as your usual Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40,000. And it's definitely down to the success of the resin Horus Heresy miniatures that Forge World produce that we can now all enjoy the plastic Horus Heresy miniatures that Games Workshop produce at sometimes half the price that Forge World used to sell them for, with no change in rules because of the change in material. So this video gives you a little bit of a backstory with Forge World and how they have grown to be a very successful arm in Games Workshop's business. To find the Horus Heresy miniatures, it's quite clear, the banner there. So we'll click on that banner and we've got a few options available to us. We are going to focus on the Legiones Astartes for this video because Mechanicum, they don't really have any plastic miniatures, and Custodes have had some plastic miniatures for quite some time, have been a separate faction in the 41st in the Warhammer 40,000 game system. you can see a few of the Resin Adeptus Titanicus miniatures there, but we're now getting hybrid kits for Necromunda. Necromunda is being expanded on greatly, which is fantastic news. So, one of the best ways for me to find all of the resin miniatures for Legiones Astartes is just to click Legiones Astartes. However, be warned, sometimes some of the miniatures and units still don't show up. The Sakaran Venator is a classic example of that. You have to physically type that vehicle in for it to show. But if we click Legiones Astartes, 9 full pages. There's 100 results here, and we're going to go through all of them individually. We're not. We'll go through a few of them. But right away, you've got this whopper of a model, this Legion Sokar pattern Stormbird. It's a unit that is discussed frequently in the Horus Heresy novels. It was very expensive to produce in the lore, and even though it had void shields, it's a flying vehicle. They can be shot down, and it was costing too much for them to be shot down over the campaigns and things. So they had to develop a smaller kind of assault craft, and they created this Legion Thunderhawk gunship. It's out of stock. I'd like to say that it is something to do with my recent live stream builds, but I can't, prove that whatsoever. I just know that it would be a fantastic Christmas present, so I can understand why. And it's a lovely model. It is my favourite Forge World miniature. But anyway, quickly moving back to the Sokar pattern Stormbird. It's a lot of money. It's £940 for something that isn't as armed as a Thunderhawk gunship. Is it iconic? Not really, no. Definitely in the lore you hear about them, but it depends how long you've been in the hobby. But you definitely would have heard more and seen more of a Thunderhawk. This nose piece right here isn't an assault ramp. I'll tell you right now. Troops are, I say limited. It's quite a step down there from that side access panel to the floor. They exit the vehicle out of these 2 large assault ramps, and there is one in the back, which unfortunately they don't show, and they don't even show a 360-degree view of the vehicle, of a £940 vehicle. It's a bit shocking. I also question the usefulness of these 2 doors at the front, because we've already got these 2 large access panels, ramps here. I think it would have been better to have a nose-mounted turbo laser or double turbo laser there instead of all of this, because it's not really an assault ramp and these doors don't really do much. So yeah, design-wise, I would have put something at the front, and then it would look like a bigger Fire Raptor. But anyway, £940. It's well designed in terms of the kit, but it is a bit of a pain to put together. I know those 2 statements contradict each other, but let me elaborate. The parts and the kit go together well, but in order to finish the kit, you will need to build and paint many parts in sub-assemblies, because there's a fair bit of interior, and there's also places where the doors need to be hinged and then glued at the same time. There's a lot of things going on with that kit, which is in stark comparison to the Thunderhawk gunship, which you've probably been watching all of the live streams and me build this. It's a fantastic kit. There's a lot of hobby craft, resin craft that you can get from this. There's multiple parts where you can magnetize. Once you build it, you can then just leave it and it'll sit there. It's a little bit like a tank, one of these resin tanks. And I like that in a miniature. I don't really necessarily like having to go back and build extra things and paint extra things to then complete a miniature. I like to build a miniature like that, and then it's done. Thunderhawk, fantastic. It was even more fantastic when it was about £100 cheaper. I think I picked mine up for 400 something. It was initially released in resin a number of years ago, many years ago, sort of like maybe 15 years ago, probably a bit more. And that kit wasn't the best, but this kit improves it in every single way. The instructions, the parts, the quality. It is iconic and it is worth it. And if you're going to get one centerpiece for a Space Marine army, this is it. Many people would like to see this in plastic. I question that. I've always questioned that. I question it in the live streams. For some reason, and I would probably say inexperienced hobbyists, think that putting a resin miniature in plastic is a magic bullet, just because it's cheaper. I can tell you right now that a plastic kit of this size would have hundreds of parts. Because of the size of the sprues involved, you know, you can't make a box too big because of a wingspan, and therefore, how many wings would you have on that sprue? How big would the box be? How many parts could you fit on that sprue? You know, if you're going to make a one piece for a wing, that's kind of a full sprue just for that one wing. Unless you break that wing into multiple parts. Multiple parts means multiple sprues. Multiple sprues mean obviously a bigger box. And the more parts, more sprues a kit has, generally the higher the cost. And generally, Games Workshop don't like to make kits with lots and lots of sprues because it's less profit because they have to make more injection molds. So price point for a kit that has hundreds of pieces, such as a Thunderhawk, if they were going to release one, would be a minimum of £300. And therefore my question then is, if you can't afford 549, you can't afford 300. And there are other ways of picking up these miniatures as well. One such way is saving up. You could put £100 a month away, or even £50 a month away. You're in this hobby at the moment. You obviously have a hobby budget. Sacrifice some of that hobby budget every month and squirrel it away for this. Another way, which I'm not recommending too hard, is paying it interest free. Either PayPal Pay in 3 or PayPal Credit, or off an interest-free credit card, something like that. But I would rather suggest the route of saving up, because then you're not in debt and you don't have something coming out, and you don't have an amount of money that you need to pay hanging over you. And I think being in debt for a hobby it definitely brings down the enjoyment of it. Getting it as a gift, getting it as a part gift. You know, maybe someone buy you a few Forge World vouchers. You know, for birthday and Christmas, you could say, "Oh, can I have a £50 Forge World voucher?" Or something like that. And then you can bank them, and then eventually use them towards something like this. So there are lots and lots of ways to go about it. Another factor other than the price point wouldn't be, you know, they're not going to sell a Thunderhawk for £100. I can tell you that right now. So if you already think £100 too much, then whatever it would be in plastic is out of your price range too. Another big point that I need to make is build time. One of these normally takes me 2 full days of nothing but the Thunderhawk gunship. A plastic one would take me many, many days, probably a week, just because of the number of parts, the cleaning involved, and all the rest of it. They're 2 kind of negative points about it. Positive is, of course, it's plastic. You may prefer to use plastic over resin because you're just used to it, or you think it doesn't require as much work. It depends. Another positive is the weight. You know, this thing does weigh a fair amount. It's not silly heavy. It's about the weight of a laptop or so, and you all carry those around with you. But weight-wise, opens it up to a flying base and a stand, which they could bundle with this. It opens up to options with the landing gear. Opens up options to gaming with it, which is what a lot of people buy these miniatures for. And another positive is because it's cheaper, you will see more. That can also be viewed as a negative in that, you know, your very big expensive model isn't as kind of special as it once was, isn't kind of as unique, because lots of people have one now. But in terms of a positive, that's great because you'll see more, they'll be used more, and That will then bump up the sales of, normal Space Marines, I would have thought. But anyway, I spent far too long on this miniature, but I think out of all of the resin miniatures, this is normally the one that's requested the most to be in plastic. And I can't see that happening anytime soon. So go ahead and add this to your basket. You won't regret it. Even if you get a resin one and they bring out a plastic one, you won't regret it because it's such a lovely model and a lovely build. And it will be worth more in the future. And you can have it for many, many years. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the video because it's turning into like a Thunderhawk video. The Legion Mastodon. Now, I unboxed and reviewed this resin miniature 6 years ago. Can you believe that it's been 6 years ago? It is time for me to pick up a second one. I totally agree. But my focus is on the Legions at the moment and completing them. And I've only got 2 more Legions to go. But anyway, more about this vehicle. I do not think they'll release this in plastic. If they did, again, it would probably be 180, 200 pounds. It would have a huge number of parts. I question whether they could do all of the detail on the top. There's a lot of 3D detailing and visor slits and things. I think they could do the tracks because those tracks look very similar to the Rhino. They could definitely do the sponsons. There's no question there. The interior as well. Could they give you as much detail in the interior? I mean, look at all that 3D detail in there. And the fact that it's got a mechanism on the door where it opens and closes, as well as the rear. I don't think they could do one in plastic. Just putting that out there. Another thing that they factor in when making these big kits in plastic is how much will it sell? It's a transport. It doesn't have a big weapon. I mean, yes, of course, the Magna melter cannon thing is Magna melter array thing is pretty big, but it's a transport at the end of the day. And yes, you can say a Land Raider or a Spartan is a transport, and so is a Rhino, but they're much, much smaller, and they're not a Lord of War. And this is what I'm getting at. Typically, Lords of War may not come to plastic. And I'm talking about like the Titans, not talking about Knights. Even the bigger tanks as well. So, speaking of which, here they are. Could they make these 3 tanks in plastic? I think they could. They already have the Baneblade in plastic, and that's a similar size. How would they do it? Well, I think they could make a Legion Fellblade and Legion Glaive combination kit. The big difference is the turret. They might just go all out and give you a completely separate kit for all 3. But I think this is the first kit we've hit on our list where being in plastic is possible, because a lot of this kit is already in plastic. It's a plastic combination kit. Now you can see it right here. You've got the sides, which are resin, but the wheels for the tracks there are plastic. Some of the front and the chassis is plastic from the Baneblade kit. It's hard to see on that image, but they could totally make this fully in plastic if they wanted to. The turret is pretty big and the weapon's pretty big, so I think if they were going to do it, it would be 3 separate kits. I can't see them making a combination kit between this and the Fellblade, and the Falchion would definitely need its own kit because of this its twin volcano cannon array. So that's the first vehicle model that we've hit where it could be all in plastic. The Charybdis Assault Claw. I'm going to say no for this. Yes, they built the Dreadnought drop pod, but this has so much detail, so many unique resin parts. It's huge. It's a transport. I can't see it being that popular, especially if they're going to charge. Let's do the half price rule. If they're going to charge £100 for this, I can't see many people biting this one. So I don't think that's going to be a possibility for that. The Stormblade, yep, I can see them totally making plastic plasma. I think at the moment it just shares the plasma blast gun from the Titan. The Fire Raptor and Storm Eagle completely. Again, they're hybrid kits, they're plastic and resin kits already. How much would they sell these for? I mean, I'd probably say 80 or £100 maybe. If they sold these for £80, yeah, that would be fantastic. As you can see there, it's a plastic and resin kit with the Storm Raven. There's the plastic parts. I do have these, and I haven't built them because I've heard they're a pain, and they are a pain to put together. Maybe I'll do a live stream, but yeah, both the Fire Raptor and Storm Eagle, especially the Storm Eagle, because not only does it give Space Marines a flyer that they haven't got at the moment, well, not really, in plastic, it also gives them like a mini Thunderhawk, and it may well put the message out to Games Workshop of how popular these are, and it might be the basis of them bringing out a plastic Thunderhawk if they were going to do that. Now, the Cerberus Heavy Tank Destroyer, you probably noticed that there is a missing tank here, and that's the Typhon. If you weren't already aware, they are bringing out the Typhon in plastic. It's pretty much guaranteed that they'll bring out the Cerberus. They just need to make these cannons, make these neutron cannons in plastic and this top area, and it's done, because it will use the same chassis. How much it will be is another matter, whether it will be the 60 or 70 pounds as the other Land Raiders. We'll see, but I think that will come. The Land Raider Armoured Proteus, I think that's going to be with us for a while, just for nostalgia value. We've already got a Land Raider Proteus. This is just the armoured version. There's no difference in the unit name in the book, but I think you can give it extra armour. The Legion Arquiters, the Morbius, the Graviton Charge Cannon, and the Spicula, I can't see them coming into plastic. These are relatively new kits that only came out a couple of years ago. They look like a Sakaran driving backwards. Sorry that I've spoilt it for you. But yes, these are expensive. They've spent a lot of money designing all these. I don't think you're going to see them in plastic anytime soon. I think they're focusing on the older kits. The Imperial Navy Voss Pattern Lightning Strike Fighter. Now, Games Workshop do have a history of creating plastic aircraft from resin aircraft, and what I mean by that is with the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie used to be in resin, then it was so popular that they made a plastic kit. It would be nice to have at least one plastic flyer for the Imperium, really, and I could see that they could do this for the Solar Auxilia. Likewise, I could definitely see them bringing out a plastic Xiphon Interceptor. I hope they do, because I'm banking on getting quite a few of these. Nothing wrong with the resin kit though. Still a gorgeous resin kit. Goes together very nicely. It's a beast in the rules as well. I'd really like to see this one in plastic. Now, the Sakaran Omega Tank Destroyer. With these Sakaran variants, I don't think they're going anywhere. Other than the Venator, which isn't here, but you can type it in and it'll pop up. They may do plastic versions of these variants, but I've got a feeling that they're going to pave their own way and make their own sort of variants other than these. But it is possible. We've got those autocannons. I think it's possible that we could get these variants eventually in plastic now that we've got the chassis. The Termite Assault Drill, I think it's too specific for them to bring out in plastic. There's so many new parts that they'd have to injection mold for that one. It's expensive now as well. Before, when it was about £70 or so, it wasn't too bad, but now that it's at 100, who uses the assault drills anyway other than a Baden? The Arcus tank, again, I don't think that's going anywhere too soon. Mark II Land Raider, I think that's going to be around for a while. Now then, these Legion Basilisk and Medusas, they're not mainstay weapons in the Space Marine, in the Legion only Astartes army books. I think they are going to be around here for a while because they're not mainstream rules. They're a plastic resin hybrid kit as well. I can't see them going to the lengths of just creating more plastic pieces for the actual weapons themselves, for this back carriage area. I think they're going to stay where they are. The Anvilus Patterned Redclaw Drop Pod. I'm not sure about this. I think it's possible because it's a hybrid kit as well with the plastic drop pod. So that is a possibility, that one. Likewise, the Dreadnought Drop Pod. I know that the Dreadnought Drop Pod only came out 3.5 years ago. I get it. But A lot of people now have access to Contemptors and specifically Leviathans, and Games Workshop are probably going to be looking at the numbers of those sales for those Dreadnoughts and thinking, we need to get these people a delivery system, especially for the Leviathan. And although there is one here on Forge World, it would be awesome for us to get one similar price point to the plastic drop pod. Still a lovely kit though, it's just quite pricey for just a single transport unit. The Legion Javelins, I think that's possible that we're going to get plastic ones. You'll notice here now that there's no Scimitar jet bikes. The Scimitar jet bikes are coming in plastic. I think we'll get these Javelin land speeders in plastic too, probably for £40 or £50, and it'll be a dual kit. I'm not sure about the sponsons. They might have to make a new missile sponson, but definitely they could use this sponsons from the Sicaran and the Predators. The Command Rhino, it's a possibility now that we've got a Deimos pattern Rhino. All they need to do is just make this satellite dish. It's quite a niche unit though, and it's not in the army list book, so I don't know whether that's going to be mainstream enough for them to just make those parts. The Vindicator Laser Destroyer, they already have a plastic Vindicator, but with this new Deimos pattern chassis, I can actually foresee them combining both of these kits into one and having it as a Vindicator all in plastic. Likewise with these Outriders, I think that's a possibility to have those in plastic too. These Proteus land speeders, I think they're too niche that they'll never come to plastic. The Saber tank is again very new tank. It's so small as well, they'd need to create all of those parts in plastic. It doesn't really share any of the parts with any other kits, so I think that's going to stay for quite some time. The Deathstorm, it's already a hybrid kit. I can't see them making the plastic weapons for that. And then we come to the Space Marines themselves. I don't think these sort of different marks are going anywhere. I would like to think we will get, Mark 6 versions of the Assault Squad and of the Despoilers, so the Assault Marines, and the Destroyers even. I'd just like to see them expand on those kits. I don't know how it would work in terms of the current leg poses, because that's what you're paying with these. You're paying with these unique posed Space Marines. Yes, they're very expensive though. A unit of 5 is the same price almost as a unit of 20 plastic Mark 6s. The elephant in the room is of course the Doredio pattern Dreadnought. They've created a Contemptor, they've created the Leviathan. Yes, I do think that the Doredio will come out in plastic at some point. What weapon options it will be included with is another option. I can see one version having the autocannons and the Volkite and these missiles. I can see the other version having the plasma and the las cannon and the Boreas missiles. So they probably will do 2 versions. I can't see them doing all of those weapons in one, but that is definitely on my wish list. I think they can do that. The Relic Contemptor, we've already got a Contemptor. I don't see the Relic Contemptor going anywhere soon. The Recon Squad, yes, I can definitely see a Recon Squad coming out in plastic, but with Mark 6s, so that's going to be great news for Raven Guard players. The Breacher Siege Squad, we do have Mark 3 Iron Armour Space Marines in plastic. It would be great to see another kit to support that plastic kit with just shields. Even if it's like a weapon upgrade sprue set for £26 and it has 10 shields in it, or 20 shields even, that would be a brilliant move rather than having to fork out £90 for 10 Space Marines. The Legion Praetors, I've already mentioned in part 1 of this series that I'd like to see a multi-part, multi-pose single Praetor set where you can kind of build your own Praetor like they used to do with the captains and force commanders. The Destroyers, again for Mark 6, I'd love to see some Rapier batteries in plastic, even if it is in the Mark 6 armour, but it'd be great if we could have some of these Mark 3s and Mark 4s. Then we come to some quite specialist models and units, which is hard to justify them being in plastic. The command sets, I don't think they're going anywhere, neither is the Heresy Army. The Champions and Master of Signals, you can pretty much make your own now. The Apothecary set though, yeah, I can see a single Apothecary miniature. I think that would be a bit strange, them just having one Mark 6 Apothecary. It would be great to have two, even if they're both Mark 6s. Apothecaries are extremely useful in game. In terms of price, though, I wouldn't be surprised if two plastic Mark 6 Apothecaries would be a similar price to what we've currently got in the Mark 3 and Mark 4. Tech Marines, I'd love to see a plastic Tech Marine. We've got them dotted about 40k all over the place. The Sentry Guns I don't think we'll get. And then we come into some more specialist units. Some of these I don't think we'll see in plastic, but we may get other consoles in plastic, and maybe a plastic Centurion, which I did mention in the previous video too. You've got weapon upgrade sets, you've got different resin weapons. I don't think we're going to get plastic versions of these, other than the Mark 6s that we have. And that's good news if you wanted to just kit out, you know, some of your plastic Space Marines. You could just buy these 5 weapons and it still be cheaper than the plastic upgrade sprues. And I think it's great that we can still pick up the Leviathan weapons separately still, even though the ranged and the normal, even though the ranged and the siege Leviathans have been around for a number of months now. They should have kept the resin Contemptor weapons. You know, if they can keep these, they can keep the Contemptors. And I think they dropped the ball on that one, because all of a sudden you had a lot of people with plastic Contemptors and they wanted to spend more money on weapons and kind of were forced to get weapon upgrade sprues rather than spend less and get single weapons. You got some more unique parts for some of the vehicles and things there as well. So that is pretty much it for this exhaustive list of the miniatures that could come out in plastic over the next 2 or 3 years. Horus Heresy this year in plastic has been a big release. It's been very popular from everything that I've seen. And I thought it was about time for me to create these 2 videos showcasing where we are currently with the plastic range and where we are with the resin range, and looking forward to seeing what's possible. So far, we've only had a few new Horus Heresy miniatures in plastic, such as the Mark 6, those Praetors, and the Kratos tank. A lot of everything else we've had for a while, such as the Terminators, and most of the products and units released are just plastic versions of what we've had before, such as the Spartan and the Deimos Rhino and the Predators and the Scorpius and the Dreadnoughts and things like that. I hope to see more brand new kits, because I think them releasing plastic versions of existing kits is a safe bet for them. It's very low risk, but I hope they do take more risks and bring out entirely new plastic kits. I hope I've covered everything in these 2 videos in this series. I hope you've learnt something, and I hope it's been enjoyable. As always, feel free to put your own thoughts and opinions and the reasons and things behind why they would make things in plastic and why they wouldn't, and what other miniatures you'd like to see down in the comments below. As always, thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.